Welcome back to the newsroom. It's a landmark case and it may result in a costly blow for companies like Ford, IBM, as well as Daimler of Germany. In focus today, we're looking closer at a lawsuit that's been brought against several companies for their alleged collaboration with the apartheid regime in South Africa. The case is playing out in a courtroom in the United States and it's due to resume later this Monday. Along with Ford, IBM and Daimler, the defendants also include General Motors, Japan's Fujitsu, and the German defense company Rheinmetall. A group of claimants accuse these companies of aiding and abetting the apartheid regime in violation of international law. But the case is controversial. Critics say it's likely to scare away outside investors more than 15 years after the end of apartheid. For more, let's cross straight to South Africa now, where correspondent Ava Gilliam is standing by. Ava, talk us through what's going to happen later today in a US courtroom and also why this is taking place in the United States at all.
Well, first I want to say this is not the beginning of the trial. This is an appeal by the American companies saying that it's outside of U.S. foreign policy, that it's against U.S. foreign policy to go through with the case. The U.S. government has said that this is not the case. And so, excuse me, the appeal is going forward. If they lose the appeal today, then that brings the possibility of a trial. So then the trial will go forward. And this is happening on U.S. soil because there's a statute of the American law that states that any human rights violations can be tried on U.S. soil. And those companies can be tried from all over the world, from U.S. companies. So basically, this is happening there because the United Nations has declared apartheid a crime against humanity. So the combination of that UN resolution saying that it's a crime against humanity and the statute of American law means that this is happening on U.S. soil.
Now, Eva, could you talk us through fairly briefly for us what the potential consequences of this case are? I mean, how much will the companies have to fork out if they lose in the end?
Well, basically, we're not sure how much money we're talking about. Even the lawyers aren't sure how much money is involved. But we do know that it is going to be very costly, into the billions of dollars. If you look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, about 20 to 25,000 people were compensated. Here we're looking at 60,000 people or more. So it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, Eva, it's been good to talk to you. Thanks very much for reporting it there from Cape Town. In a moment, we'll continue looking into the effects of this court case in South Africa itself with our guest this morning. For now, though, let's play a report outlining the details of the case a bit further and what the claimants are saying.
Sindiswa is one of tens of thousands of South Africans who have taken up a class action suit against international companies that collaborated with the apartheid regime. In 1976, Sindiswa, in her 5th month of pregnancy, was tortured and lost her baby. This would be one of many deaths for her and her family. A victim of the system, she's tracking down the international players from those years.
If the company that is dealing with the weapons never assisted our government, definitely our government wouldn't do the way they were doing, because in the townships for 24 hours, the hippos, the vans were running around, shooting us. You know, we couldn't have any space to breathe.
Millions of South Africans were direct victims of apartheid. A dozen multinational corporations are implicated in the case. Among them, Swiss banks involved in gold trading, German car companies who provided military vehicles, and computer companies whose software made the racial classification of the regime dangerously efficient. South African lawyers have been preparing the case for nearly 10 years. American law allows individuals to sue any accomplice to human rights violations. The United Nations has classified apartheid as a crime against humanity and is therefore judgeable in American courts.
There was an immense emotional support for the Holocaust suits because of its immense, atrocities. One, in fact, wonders why you don't have that same kind of support when, in fact, for more than 40 years, people in South Africa has literally gone through a Holocaust experience.
In South Africa, the case is widely supported as the issue of reparations has never been resolved. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission very seldom indemnified the victims of apartheid. Many hope that this judicial saga will begin the putting in place of a reparation fund that will target those who are most in need.
And that no money would have to be administered in such a way that those who suffered under apartheid and continue, and this is important, and continue to suffer even after our independence since 1994, that those people benefit from these funds.
It could take years to resolve the case, and the complainants have no qualms about waiting. They have nothing to lose, they say.
You know, we're just like the David and Goliath. We told ourselves that we're going to be patient as much as we can. Whatever we can be defeated, but the fact of the matter, even the world would knew that we fight it for this.
None of the implicated companies have commented on the lawsuit thus far. For them, it is business as usual in the country once ruled by apartheid.
Let's look closer at the potential fallout of this case now. With us from Pretoria in South Africa, we have Paul Simon Handy, who's the head of the African Security Analysis Program. Thanks very much for speaking to us. First of all, I mean, from your perspective, is it a good or a bad thing that this lawsuit is taking place in the first place?
It's actually neither good nor bad. Technically, there's a case for a lawsuit, actually. There's a case because apartheid was doomed a crime against humanity by the UN. Apartheid was the apartheid regime, the apartheid government was the South African apartheid government was under international sanctions and more or less a pariah in the international society. And the apartheid regime was actually also oppressing a huge portion of the South African population. So technically, there's a case, but of course, the first administrations, the first post-apartheid administrations in South Africa were actually opposing such a lawsuit. Mbeki's administration, for example, was extremely against this case because the Mbeki administration was of the opinion that it will scare away much-needed international investors from South Africa. So, and also there are questions around.
Sorry for interrupting you. Why then has the administration of Jacob Zuma changed its mind and sort of reversed this position from the Mbeki government?
It's not clear for the moment. We don't have clear information. What we know is that recently in September, the Zuma administration sent a letter to the U.S. judge saying that it would support such a claim in a U.S. court, which was a major about turn from the Mbeki's administration position. They might have, the South African government might have got access to certain documents, to certain evidence that we don't have. I can't anticipate that, but what we know is that it's a major change, and this will have, of course, a tremendous impact now, not only on the South African society, but also certainly also it might set a standard. Should we go to the trial, it might set a standard for the practices of international corporations, not only in Africa.
But I mean, the question at the base of all of this is whether or not these companies actually benefited from apartheid. From your perspective, is it possible to say that companies such as Ford, such as IBM, such as General Motors actually made a profit of the repressive regime?
I'm not sure if we can say that they made a profit from a repressive regime. What is clear is that they did business with South Africa. But they're not the only ones, actually. South Africa might have been under sanctions, but it's not a secret that South Africa was actually enjoying or was doing business with many countries, including African countries who were officially against or were officially opposing the apartheid regime. So it would be difficult to prove that they made a profit out of a repressive regime. What is clear and what is clearly established is that they did business with South Africa under apartheid.
All right, Paul Simon Handy, thanks very much for speaking to us here at France 24. We really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to wrap up Focus for now. Do stay with us. There's more news coming your way.